What's up, CNC Woodworkers? My name's Corbin Dunn, and today I want to help you learn how to design your own bowl shapes in Fusion 360. If you've been following my channel, then you know I've been making some custom bowl shapes on my CNC machine, but one of the things I haven't talked a lot about is how to actually design them in CAD. I want to show you how to do one of these designs in Fusion 360. This is a basic bowl shape with some epoxy drips. I'm going to cover this in 3 parts. This first video is going to be how to do the CAD in Fusion. The second video is how to do the CAM, or the computer-aided manufacturing, where we design some tool paths. Then the third video is going to be actually making the bowl in real life. Okay, so the first thing I did is to fire up Fusion 360 and create a new project. Inside of that project, I create a new component. It's always good to create components to isolate your work. By default, the component is active, which means it has that little selected icon next to the component's name in the tree view on the left. Notice my origin isn't visible, so I hit the icon next to it to show the origin for the component. Now that I have the origin visible, I right-click on the XY plane and select Create Sketch. What I want to do is create a sketch for the rough dimension of the bottom of the bowl. At the center of the axis, the mouse sort of snaps there, and I select the Create Circle option, and I create a circle with about the rough dimensions of the bottom of the bowl. This is just a guide, and I may not actually follow this dimension. It's good practice to name your sketches to keep everything organized really well. So next I want to create a sketch for the top of the bowl. So I'm going to right-click on that same XY plane and select Offset Plane. I type in the height that I want the bowl to be, and in this particular case it's 2 1/4 inches. Once I have that plane offset, I can right-click on it and select Create Sketch. So here I want to create a sketch for the rough dimension of the top of the bowl. So I create another circle, and I just hit C, the shortcut, but you could also select the icon. I select the center of the axis and create a circle with about 5 3/4 inches in diameter. As usual, I rename the sketch so that I have good organization. So next I need to create the side profile. So I'm going to right-click on the ZY plane or the ZX plane and create another sketch. This is going to be the side profile. So those existing sketch lines in the other sketches are showing up, but we can't actually snap to them, and I want to be able to snap to them. So essentially I want to project those lines into our current sketch. So I hit P for project, and I select those 2 lines and hit OK. Notice those lines change from blue to purple. This means they are projected into our current sketch. I'm going to use the Bezier Path tool to go ahead and create a Bezier path for the profile of the bowl. In this particular case, I decided to kind of ignore the bottom dimension of the bowl just to go for better aesthetics. I decided to create a couple of spline points. You can spend quite a bit of time kind of tweaking the curves and playing with it to get it to look the way you want. So one of the things I wanted to do is control the dimensions of the thickness of the bowl. So I hit D and create a dimension for about 350 thousandths on the top of the bowl, and then kind of just eyeballed everything else. So after I did some renaming of my sketch, I have a good side profile. I selected the Revolve tool and then selected this profile, and I want to revolve it around the Z-axis. So I select the Z-axis, and that created our nice basic bowl shape. Good practice is to rename the bodies, so I knew this created a body and I exposed it with the outline view and renamed it. So at this point I want to create the bottom of the bowl. And I want to select that XY plane, and so what I do is I click and hold and wait for a second. And what this will do is present us a menu of the options that we can select for what's under the mouse at that current time. So I can scroll down in that list, or mouse down that list, and select the XY plane. Then as before, I right click and select Create Sketch, and we're going to create a sketch for the bottom of the bowl. I rotate around to the bottom view of the bowl using the little gizmo on the top right. And so now the sketch is active. I hide the other sketches, and what I want to do is, like before, I want to have that bottom profile be projected into this current sketch. So I go ahead and select those lines that I want to be projected and hit OK to project them into our current sketch. Once that line is projected, I can now select it and we can actually extrude it. So I hit E for extrude and I give it the height that I want to actually extrude to, and I select a join so it joins with the existing component. Then as before, I rename that bottom sketch so I have good organization. So let's smooth out the bowl a little bit by creating some fillets. So I create a nice big fillet on the bottom to give it a nice round shape. Select the two top lines and give them just a tiny bit of a fillet. I kind of just play with the values until it's kind of what I think I want. So this is the point where we have the basic bowl shape. Now let's figure out how to add the drips. Okay, before I add the drips, I want to create some better organization. So I select this bowl item in the little outline view, and I'm going to want to copy it. So I go down, hit copy. Then I right click on my base top level object and I select paste new. So what this is doing is this is creating a new copy of that existing bowl, and we're going to rename it to be the drip bowl. I didn't want to just do a base copy where any changes I made to this bowl would be reflected in the other bowl. I wanted it to be a unique new instance, so I did new copy. I hit the little icon next to the bowl name to activate it, so we're going to be operating on this bowl from now on. Then I go ahead and hide the original bowl. So now is the fun part, and basically I go to the scripts and add-ins and I hit the add-ins tab and I add an add-in that's called image to surface. Check out the description for a link on where to actually download this add-in, but this is where you would just add the add-in and start it, or hit run on startup to have it start every time. Once you have that add-in loaded, you can then do add-ins and show the image to surface item. So what we're going to do is create the drips. So I hit choose file and I select this bowl drips JPEG image, and it's just a black and white image where the dark parts will be low and the white parts will be high, or vice versa depending on the options you select, and this will create the nice bumpy map that we want for something that looks like drips. I just created this in Photoshop and in Illustrator, and check out the description to download my particular one if you want to actually play around with it. So in this little image to surface thing, you can kind of click on the image here and drag it around to kind of see the bumpiness that's going to generate. But what I really care about is basically the size that's going to generate. And so I'm going to just do a quick calculation to kind of figure out, well, what size do I want? 5 3/4 inches, which is roughly 146 millimeters. And if I take a look at the dimensions that's generating, I can tweak them a little bit. And these pixels to skip, the step over, the height. This kind of just play around with these until you get something that's what you want, basically the bumpiness that you want or whatnot. Once I have something that I'm pretty happy with, I hit generate surface. So this inserted something into our current project, and we have to figure out how to actually use it. So I'm going to go over to the solid tab and select create form so I can tweak it a little bit. I select utilities and convert because we want to actually convert this. It's a quad mesh and we want a T-spline, so it's selected and I hit OK. So we are still in this form mode, and what it's doing is creating the appropriate thing we need to actually manipulate stuff. And so at this point I could use the form mode some more to kind of scale it or tweak it. So here I selected the body, and make sure in move object you have body selected, and then I can kind of just tweak the XY position to kind of be where I want over our bowl. It's probably good to do this after you're actually out of the form tool, but I kind of forgot. So I hit the finish form button, and that's going to go ahead and generate the thing that we need to actually slice through our bowl and generate the I don't know, the tool that we need to cut the bowl in half. Alright, so once we did that, notice that we have another body here, and it's got this orange icon next to it. So at this point I'm going to want to scale those drips a bit so they actually align a little bit better in our bowl. And I can't remember how to scale, so I just type S, which is the search shortcut, and then start typing scale, and then hit enter once scale is selected. So some notes on scale. Don't try and drag the blue arrow. It's just drastically too slow. Instead, go and type in a scale factor. So I want to be able to see what these drip bumps are going to do with respect to our bowl that we're creating. And so I'm going to go ahead and tweak the opacity. And I'm not sure why setting the opacity on the bowl body doesn't work, but if I select it on the entire object, it makes everything have an opacity and I can see through stuff. So at this point I can select our drips and kind of tweak things to be sort of where we want. I select move copy, and it's better to select the body and then do a move copy. If you try invoking move copy by hitting M and then clicking on something, you're going to move the faces. And so you want to make sure the move object says bodies and not faces. This confused me quite a bit at the start. So I just grab this, move it, and then kind of rescale it and tweak it until it's in the position I want to basically make some drips inside the bowl. So I moved it on the XY, and now I'm going to select it and move it in just the Z. And so this is going to be where we're going to have the drips in the bowl. So at this point I'm going to do a little bit more scaling and a little bit more tweaking. If I want the drips to be bigger, I scale them only in the Z axis, and that makes the drips more pronounced and larger. Alright, so as I orbit around, this is looking pretty good, but some of the drips aren't lining up quite exactly where I want, and so I just kind of tweak things a little bit more. Once everything looks pretty good, I think I'm going to use this as the location for my split. So I select Modify, Split Body, so I can split the bowl body with that tool, that face that we created, which is bumpy. So I go ahead and hit OK, and then you kind of just wait for it to chug along. I've had some issues with this not working. Basically, if the split would not completely split through, it won't do the split and it'll generate an error. So you just have to make sure that your splitting tool is intersecting in a way that will properly split into two or more objects, essentially. So once the split tool finishes, I could go ahead and just kind of select the items in my bodies and see what's what. And what it did is we can hide the tool body because we don't need it anymore, but we have those drips which look pretty cool, and they're separate bodies. So this top one is just a top little drip. This bottom one is the bottom of the bowl, which is going to be in wood. And the top are the top drips portion that we're going to do in epoxy. So at this point we can go ahead and tweak the appearance a little bit. So I hit A to bring up the appearance panel, and I go ahead and select some colors and drag them on over to things to kind of add some textures so we can kind of get a better idea of what the bowl is going to look like. And so there you have it. This is the basic drip epoxy bowl. In the next video, I'm going to show how I'm going to do the cam or the tool paths. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed watching how I go about creating these types of bowls. This is just a basic concept. I use lots of lofting and other techniques to create the interesting shapes. If you want to see a video of those, let me know in the comments and maybe I can create one at some point.